Hey, intentional lifers. So, we're talking about God providing. So, His word says that He'll provide for us according to His riches and glory. I want to share a story with you about how God provides, even when it looks like He's not or what's going on. So, it's the story, it's in Genesis, and it's the story of Abraham and Isaac. Isaac was the promised child to Abraham and his wife Sarah in their old age. So, God, this was their child that they were waiting for all their lives to have. And God said, sacrifice this child to me. And so, Abraham, Abraham said, absolutely. God told him to get up and go to this place that I'm going to tell you. And Abraham did it. And so, the interesting thing about this, there's lots of interesting things about this story, and I'm going to try to stay on track. But it's a great story that of faith and how God provides. So I encourage you guys to read it. But the part I wanted to address today is found in Genesis 22:13 and 14. So God told him to go to this place, and he got up early that morning and then went with his servants and his son and with all the supplies that they would need to sacrifice. And so when they get to the place, Abraham tells his servant, stay here, me and the boy will be back after the sacrifice. Now, mind you, God had told him to sacrifice Isaac. So it looks like to me, Abraham didn't tell anybody else. He just told everybody else he was just going to sacrifice so that they would not be concerned. Like I said, there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. So at some point while they're going up, when they left the servant, Isaac asked, well, God, Dad, we have everything. We have the wood, we have the flint, we have everything for the sacrifice. But what is the sacrifice? And what does he say to his son? He says to him, God will provide. And that's the same thing that I'm saying to you guys today. And I want to say to you every day, God will definitely provide. So Isaac is going up this hill with his father, this mountain with his father to sacrifice, which this is something he's seen before. So he knew, because he could say, well, Dad, we have this. Where's the sacrifice? And his dad said, God will provide. So they keep going up the mountain and get there. And they set everything down and do everything that they're supposed to do. And can you imagine? Isaac is still like, okay, so where's the sacrifice? Then his dad ties him up and lays him on the altar. And his dad is poised and ready to strike, to sacrifice his only son because God asked. And it was at that moment when he was totally committed to the sacrifice that God stepped in. The angel said, hold up, and I'll read it to you in Genesis 22, verse 13 and 14. Verse 13, and Abraham lifted up his eyes and, go up a little bit. When the angel spoke to him in verse 10, and Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Verse 11 is when the angel stopped him, and the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, here am I. And he said, lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing that thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, verse 13, the one 13 and 14, where I wanted to draw your attention today. And behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket. So sometimes for God provision, sometimes God will take us to the point of where Abraham was. And Abraham was holding the knife with his son tied down, ready to strike. And the angel said, Abraham, Abraham. And so sometimes we've got to get to that point where God will provide so that we know he will provide. So imagine if you're asking God to pay your light bill, to provide for you, and you're just like, okay, this bill is due today at 5 o'clock. Are they going to turn my lights off? And you've known this for 3 days. And you're just like, God, come on, what's going on? It could be in the final hour when they show up to turn the lights off that the guy gets a call. and says, her bill has been paid. And see, you had to get all the way to that point. You had to go through those 3 days, those 2 weeks, whatever it was, to know that God was going to provide. He will always provide for us. And he will never, ever be late. Even when we think he's late, he's not late, because he shows up right on time, just like he did for Abraham and Isaac. Just like he did. Verse 14, and Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. So be encouraged. God will provide. He doesn't provide in our time. You know, Abraham had a long time to think about it because God told him the night before. So he had to sleep knowing that God has asked me to sacrifice my son. He had to get up. He got up, rose up early in the morning the next day, packed the supplies, told everybody, I'm headed out. Even to the point of getting there and tying his son down. But he knew, because he said it to his son, God will provide his lamb. God will provide. And God will provide for you as well. So be encouraged, even if it's in the final hour, even if whatever that is held right over your head and the knife is coming down before it pierces your heart, before it does any damage, God will step in and he will provide. I love you guys. Be intentional about trusting God, because he will provide. If you haven't already, join my YouTube page, hit that subscribe and like button. And also get the Intentional Life, Connecting the Dots of Pattern for Clarity. It'll help you out. It's intentional.